my grandma would give me a pot of compote, the cherry juice. And people like, what, you're drinking out of that? I'm like, what's wrong with that? I didn't understand. That's what my childhood was about, I actually got into sushi or gimbap before it became famous. Like, I used to pay their mums to make it for me for lunch.
Ukrainians are different. If you say, hi, how are you? He will sit down, hey, listen, my friend, this is what has gone on, and tell you the story.
A part of my heart is still in Lviv. I fell in love with that city, and it's never gone. How much people like to drink in the UK at university, that was mind-blowing for me. I had princes calling me in the middle of the night saying they want to fly private.
Crazy. Identity Talks, episode 8. We're on episode 8 already. Wow, time goes fast. Okay, let me do a quick introduction. Today's guest. First of all, I want to say his name is Alex Mansfield. But let me do the introduction. Today on Identity Talks, we sit down with someone who understands identity through 4 different worlds: Ukraine, Switzerland, the UK, and now Dubai. Alex Mansfield went from arriving in the UK as a kid to becoming a regional sales manager. At what company, I'm not going to say. Let's keep it confidential. One of the biggest names in private aviation. His story touches identity, class, mobility, culture, and the immigrant mindset behind high-level success. Let's get into the real journey and the real reality behind luxury aviation. Alex, thank you for being on my show.
Of course, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I know you just arrived. Was it yesterday from Dubai? No.
Yeah, it was yesterday afternoon into the cold winter of the UK.
How long are you staying in Dubai? Like for good, or you're there for business, but you're still coming back here in the UK?
Yeah, our company has a very strategic, important headquarters over there, and I play a big role in looking after the local clientele that are based some of the time there, but also importantly covering both time zones, the Eastern European time zone as well as the CIS time zone.
Seriously, you just said the word Eastern European, because this is something that we do talk about in this. We do cover Eastern Europeans here in this podcast. I got a few topics for you, but I want to understand you a bit more. I'm going to start with the first topic: identity across countries. The first question I'd like to ask you is, how did moving from Ukraine to Switzerland to UK and now Dubai shape who you are today?
This is a very interesting question because I've been quite blessed to see different cultures in the world, in Europe, but also in the Middle East. And it's really shaped my ability to think both as, if you like, a Western European, but also as a Ukrainian, if you like. I left Ukraine very young. It happened when the USSR broke up and borders opened, and my mom went to study in England at the time, and that was the first time she saw what a Western democratic country was like. It was a big difference for her, and she saw a life there. So at the time, we didn't have the opportunity straight away to move to England. We moved actually to Holland, to a city called Edam, which is 10 kilometers out of Amsterdam. For those who don't know that city, it's the city that produces cheese. It's very famous. So actually my very early childhood began in the Netherlands, in Holland.
So how old were you when you moved?
3.
You were
3 and a half, yeah. And I moved there. Back then, Ukrainians were not as internationally known well. In fact, I think a lot of countries still had that kind of USSR mindset that we're all alike, But me starting in a Western European country, I was the only Ukrainian in the school, probably in my city as well.
Yeah,
and there was a lot of mixed reactions. There was negative. There was some curiosity, positivity.
Negative? I mean, what way negative?
I probably would say a nice word such as prejudice. Yeah, because they saw us as communists. They saw us as maybe not as civil to a degree. So there was, a mix of reactions when I entered the school for the first time. And culturally, I was different. What I ate, what I drank, the stuff that my grandma would cook for me and I would bring to school would be culturally very shocking for them, very different. The normal Dutch kids would bring sandwiches to school, for example, for lunch. And my grandma would give me a pot of compote, the cherry juice. And people like, what, you're drinking out of that? I'm like, what's wrong with that? I didn't understand. That's what my childhood was about. That's how I used to eat and drink. And For them, that was strange. And then, I would have stuff like buckwheat, which would be alien to them. They wouldn't understand what that is. So, it's little things like that. And you can say that there was some resentment from the local people that were living there towards me because of, me being a little bit different. Fast forwarding time a little bit, at the age of 9.5, or around 9 years from what I remember, I moved to London. I moved to a city called New Malden at the time. Shifted between New Malden to Kingston to Surbiton. So I lived pretty much on the outskirts of London. Grew up in the UK education system. I finished my primary school, secondary school, my university, and then I got a job offer to go to Switzerland. So that wasn't really planned. It just happened. So I found myself again in a new country at the age of 22. Who would have thought? And what was quite fortunate is that I did study a high degree of German in school. So that helped me land in Zurich more smoothly. They speak High German there as well as Swiss German, but High German is well enough, to be accepted there if you spoke it. And I stayed there for 5 years as well. And then my company at the time, that's actually where I fell into my profession, where I am in today. I moved back to London. Our company opened up their headquarters in Knightsbridge, where I stayed another couple of years. And then the company that I'm working for now bought out that company. And I stayed with them for 3 years. And then the opportunity came for me to move to the Middle East. That was just shortly after the war actually happened. So I felt emotionally a very challenging time. But that led, shall I say, in the short version, me being exposed to so many countries and living in so many different cities.
I want to ask you, when you said when you were in UK, when you moved to UK and you went to school, college, uni, were you the only Ukrainian in school? Or is it by the time you reached a certain age in your life where you realized that, in school, in primary, I'm the only one. Once you get to secondary school, you don't really care if you're Ukrainian or not, because you basically I say by the time you probably integrated a lot more to the country, no? What was your life growing up here in the UK? Especially because you didn't come across a lot of Ukrainians here, did you?
I saw myself a little bit more Dutch, if I'm honest, because that's the only language I could properly speak. I spoke very broken Ukrainian at the time because I grew up in the Western education establishments. So at the time when I relocated when I moved to England, I saw myself more as a Dutch affiliated person because that's what I understood. That's what I was socialized in. That was my environment. So I guess there was a bit of a confusion in identity there a little bit. But moving to England, to answer your question, primary school, I was the only kid. For sure, 100%. No doubts. Everybody knew each other. I was the only kid.
What? Not even. Sorry, 1 second, Alex. What, in your school? You didn't even have any Polish, Lithuanians? Anyone closer to Eastern? Not even one.
Not in primary school.
What about secondary?
Secondary school. Some appeared. We had, from what I remember, 2 Polish kids, maybe 3 Polish kids.
What year was this now? This what I assume.
Year 8, year 9.
Yeah, wait, year 8, year 9. What year exactly would that be? Would that be 2000 and? No, that would be 2012, no?
2012 is when if I remember correctly, that's when I started or finished university, actually. I finished university. So way before that, we're looking into the early 2000s now, actually.
So 2010, maybe even earlier than that. Yeah,
earlier,
because college,
earlier than that. So we're looking at maybe 2004, 5,
Yeah, that's when our first wave of Eastern Europeans started coming up, with the Polish, the Balkans.
When Poland joined the EU, a lot of them started to come here for work, mainly. From what I observed, and we saw some school kids. There was one Lithuanian kid from what I remember. There was no Ukrainians. There was no other nationalities from that part of the world. Again, I was the solo person.
But when you met Eastern Europeans, when you did meet them, were you surprised, or were you like, you know what, since I've already integrated in the British society, it don't really matter to me if they're Eastern Europeans or not? Or
I had a mix of different friends at school. Now referencing specifically secondary school. And I had friends from Sri Lanka. I had friends from, a lot of them were from South Korea. I was quite fascinated actually by their culture because I never was exposed to that culture before. I actually got into sushi or gimbap before it became famous, everywhere in the world. And people thought I was crazy and nuts eating that stuff. I used to pay their mums to make it for me for lunch. I love that food. But my friends were from a different nationalities, different backgrounds. So to tell you the truth, did I feel Eastern European at that point? No, I felt more, I guess, British-Ukrainian. That's where that kind of emergence began to come up, because I started to understand more of the food I was eating. I was, shall I say, more self-aware of who I was, what my background was, and so on. So, and I started to take more interest into my grandparents' life stories as well.
You're very similar to me, because you came here at a young age, even younger than me. I came here when I was 7, and I had the same experience. I tell you, for a long time, I had the identity crisis. I didn't know where do I belong,
or even who to look up to, right? Because it's different for the people that were growing up or in their school in Ukraine. You probably don't even have such a diverse range of people.
Yeah.
Whereas England, as a country, it's one of the most, or the UK is one of the most diverse places in Europe, if not the world. So yeah, it can give that kind of maybe sense of being lost,
Yeah, because I wanted to add something that I really, I wish I had this in school. Now, of course, I'm older, so it doesn't matter to me. But I wish in school, I remember Turkish used to be with the Turks. You had the Indians with the Indians. I remember the Polish, when they came in, they had the Polish, like this little circle. I had no one, you had to kind of always defend yourself. But there's another thing that you said, you kind of was universal. I think it's because you integrated. You had to integrate, Alex, because you didn't have no Eastern Europeans back then. I mean, it was I don't know. It's like it's like going to the wild, going to the jungle, and you're seeing a unicorn, for instance. It was really weird. I tell you, I'll be honest with you. When I saw even Lithuanians walking down back then, when they speak Russian, I would turn around and say, "Wow, where are you from?" In Russian language, like wow, and they say I'm Latvian and stuff like that. You're like, "Wow, this is amazing." Now it's different. You got many Ukrainians. You got a lot of Eastern Europeans. Like you said, more diversification now as well. And I think as well that change is the technology as well. Now because that we got so many things. But which other country, all these countries that you've been, which country influenced you the most?
It's a very good question. Obviously, growing up in the UK, that was the country that influenced me the most. As a child, when I was in Holland, I was still developing and finding myself. So can't say that culturally I took much from there. No disrespect to the country or the culture itself. It's just a different point in my childhood. But in the UK, I learned, the art of being punctual. I learned the importance of being, organized, flexible, creative. When I moved to Switzerland, that really helped me be efficient, more master the art of perfection, because that's how the Swiss are, right? When people think of Switzerland, they think of high quality, and that's embedded in their culture. So, I think maybe one drawback of that country, depending on your opinion, is they're very rule to the book, just like the Germans, right? And that's where the British advantage maybe is, where you are more flexible, more diplomatic, you're more open-minded a little bit. And it's not to say one is more superior than the other, but for me, in terms of how it helped me shape, I'm able to, convert from one to another in my environment, how I need to be. So, if I come into contact with a person from a German-speaking country, I can sort of be in their level. I can understand what their expectations are. Whereas if I'm talking with a British person, it's a bit more like, depending almost like on the weather, that will be the result, I think, on the subject of culture, though, one thing that I still can't, get acclimatized or accustomed to, small talk.
Yeah, small talk. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've tried, and I do it out of respect, but I don't do that with my super close friends. Even Ukrainians, we don't talk about the weather.
Yeah, no, it's true. Ukrainians, I tell you, a lot of people don't know this, but Ukrainians find small talk very hard for them. Like even if you say, "How are you doing?" Ukrainians will actually literally sit down and will tell you the full story about what to do. But usually, you know how it is. You go to work, you say hello. It's like it's the normal thing in here in UK. When you say you speak to someone, "Hey, how are you?" People are like, "Yeah, I'm fine, great," and wonderful, and they walk by. But Ukrainians are different. If you say, "Hi, how are you?" he will sit down, "Hey, listen, my friend, this is what has gone on," and tell you the story.
Yeah, they can interpret that as maybe being, not polite, basically. Yeah. And my sister is more British than I am, for sure. Also because she grew up all her life in the UK, right? She didn't have that international exposure like I did, living in different countries. And she's the one who tells me that sometimes stuff like this, like, oh, you should say this or you should be like that next time. I'm like, okay. Learning from my sister, instead of she learning from me. So
regarding countries, the countries that you've been, do you feel like you belong everywhere or nowhere?
Good question. I feel at this point in my life, I belong where my family is. So if my family is in the UK, my heart is there. It's my answer to that question. So a part of me still feels strong ties to Ukraine. I have a very soft spot for Ukraine. I will never forget my heritage. I will never forget the culture, the traditions my family's practiced. I've grown up around that. I salute to that,
Where are you from? Where are you from in Ukraine?
So my heritage comes from Lviv.
Are you from Lviv? West side of Ukraine?
Yeah. And it's a beautiful city for me. I love everything about that city. I love the square. I love, our own heritage there, our uniqueness there, our culture there, our coffee shops, our food, how people present themselves. It's a place where it's easy to make friends. At least for me, it was when I go there. It's so easy. People are open-minded to speak. They're very pro-international. They're pro-European. I can't wait to go back. Honestly,
Alex, I'll be honest with you. I didn't know. I know about Lvov. I know about Lviv, but a lot of things that you just said there, I didn't really believe it until Ukrainians were coming here and telling me all these little things. And now I do believe it because when they do tell me all these things, I do go on social media and do check out. And I'd say the architecture is beautiful. And obviously, like you said, coffee shop. I had a guy here on episode 3, Vadim Ranzomsky. He's big in the Ukrainian community. He makes one of the best coffees here. And he's got a signature move called a flat red pomegranate. I tell you, try it. The best.
I'm a coffee guy, so for sure.
Alex, I had him here. And after my episode with him, once I tried his coffee, I never wanted to touch those coffees that you make at home? Nescafe and all these things very quick. Didn't want to try it. And he said once you try this kind of coffee, you want to go to baristas. Baristas here in the UK, not Starbucks. I'm not talking about Costas and stuff that go into
like independent chains.
Yeah, independent chains and stuff like that. And I tell you, he said if you had to go to one of these because they still make good coffee. I want to go a bit further with you. I said, what do you remember most about coming to UK as a kid?
Gosh,
because you were 9. You were 9 and a half.
I think one of the first barriers I had was the ability to speak English. My strongest language at that point was Dutch. Right, I grew up. I spoke to everyone in Dutch. I didn't go to Ukrainian school. I didn't go to any other schools. I grew up at that time in a Dutch education system. So my mentality, my thinking, my cultural alignments, everything was Dutch. Then coming to England, the only English I knew is what I learned from Bruce Lee movies. That's a true story. I used to watch Bruce Lee. I was obsessed with Bruce Lee when I was a kid, and the way I learned English from him was because they had Dutch subtitles when he was speaking. And that's how I picked up like a very basic level of English. I couldn't write, but I could speak it to a very conversational level.
What about reading? You could read?
What, English?
Yeah, English.
Yeah, but my pronunciation was off, but the teachers respected it, they admired it, because I was one of those kids that I wasn't afraid to make mistakes, and I always had the best intentions. They could see that I would always try my best. And whenever I remember some kids, one of the first words I got wrong in pronunciation was the word think. I used to say tink.
Tink.
And the kids laughed, and then the teacher said, "Shh, can anybody else speak here Dutch?" The room went silent. And I understood what she said, and I respected that. And, from that point forward, obviously I kept improving my English, but I never doubted myself, because I knew the teacher had my back.
So, you're saying this. This is the question I'd like to ask you on this, what you said. Did being Ukrainian in the UK make you feel different?
Yes, because especially when I joined primary school and in my beginning early years of secondary school, I was the only one. And most school kids didn't even know where Ukraine existed, for them, Eastern Europe, was basically Russia. That's all they understood. Sorry to say, but that was the. I think that's maybe down to school a little bit, or maybe that's down to the lack of languages we learned at school back then in those days. Maybe it's because the weak geography teaching. Maybe it's because what they're taught in history was USSR, so they think everything is USSR is the same. You know, even today, a lot of English people, British people, they don't know where Kazakhstan is, or maybe they do now because of Borat, but they don't know where Azerbaijan is. They don't know where Uzbekistan is.
But Alex, my question is for you is that how comes that we as Eastern Europeans, Ukrainians, all the countries, why is it that we know our geography better than the Western Europeans?
I think it's an exposure thing, and I think maybe it's how schools are run. I didn't go to Ukrainian school, so I can't say for sure. But my family, my uncle specifically, he said to me, "You need to know your geography, because if someone in your job asks you about what's the capital city of that country, and you don't know it, they'll laugh at you." And I believed that. And so I started learning immediately all the capital cities in Europe. I went to the other continents, and then I started to cry because I couldn't remember Africa. I couldn't remember the capital cities in Africa. And he said, "Look, don't worry, you're not the only one."
But Africa,
that's a true story.
Africa's big, man. Africa is a continent. First of all, it's a continent, and it's got 54 different states.
No, I'm specifically referring, I know that it's a continent, I'm not making any mistakes here, but what I'm saying is that the capital cities of those countries in Africa were hard to memorize because they didn't have what I would describe as European sounding names. They had their own unique names. So Africa, in terms of, when I say Africa, I mean the countries in Africa, the capital cities, for many of them, I couldn't remember, and that really upset me.
No, you make sense. So while you're here in the UK, what was the toughest cultural adjustments for you at that time? What was it hard for you to adjust? What was even a culture shock for you?
I guess apart from the language was the mentality of people. You know, I always grew up and was brought up in the environment of sport and dedication. And at the time, the school that I went to and the university I went to didn't take sport as maybe serious, especially university. When I even though I lived in the UK, in London for a long time, I think one culture shock, even years later down the line, that was a big shock to me, was how much people like to drink in the UK at university. That was mind-blowing for me, because my mind was set on sport. The first thing I did when I came to university, my first year, I signed up to the nearest martial arts class, and I began investing in sport. And I saw my peers, enjoying having every night out drinking. There's like a costume party there. There is a drinking night session here, a house party over there. And don't get me wrong, it's good to party and have time to unwind. But the drinking culture, when I reached adulthood as a British-Ukrainian, was a big shock for me. I think another thing that may be shocking now that I think about it, there was only one Ukrainian that I knew in the university at the time in Nottingham. So that was a bit of unusual situation.
Wait. You say unusual. Why was it unusual?
Well, you just don't think that there's so little of us, the UK is a diverse place. We have many other nationalities. Why not Ukrainian? Why not, I don't know, similar neighboring countries to Ukraine? Why are they not here? It's strange. It's strange. And again, that's a bit of a shock. I do understand that there's visa complications. I do understand that there's other matters, but the others from outside of Europe, for example, can come here. And it's a bit unexpected, I guess.
Yeah, but if others can come around, maybe it's because they were part of the colony. So it's easier for them to come around here.
Very valid point. Maybe that's something I didn't consider.
Maybe, yeah.
It's not something you think about, I guess, at that age, right?
Yeah. You don't really think about that. But yeah, like you said, I bet you met. Did you meet that Ukrainian guy? Did you talk to him?
Oh, that was one girl at the time, and briefly, yeah. I think but we have very different interests. She was all about the drinking and the parties. I was more into the sport, but we were in the same class and we did work together.
So yeah, but when you met her, when you met her and spoke to her, and you said to her that I'm Ukrainian, did she believe you? Because I bet your English was perfect. You knew the mentality. You're more British than more Ukrainian. What was her reaction about you?
She didn't really believe it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, she wouldn't really believe it. And we never were like proper friends or anything. We just kind of were classmates, is what I would describe it as.
You see, your story is so similar to mine because I never met Ukrainians. I remember when I met, I'm not talking about family, family like your mom and dad when they meet Ukrainians. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your peers, your level. My first time I met a Ukrainian, my level, my age group, when I was 18. So I think about I came here 18. That's almost 10 years ahead that I've never met someone in my peers, except for my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Right. And you want to meet someone that is someone in your peers level. When I met him, became friends, we worked together and so forth. But his mindset was different because he was a Ukrainian that just arrived here. And I've been, like, how can I say it? Like you call yourself a British-Ukrainian, like when you're here for a very long time and then you meet two different mindsets, very. Let's go next. Immigrant roots to luxury aviation. What pulled you into the aviation world? I think you already mentioned that you were you got a job in, was it Switzerland? And from Switzerland, you came to UK, from UK to Dubai, right? So yeah. So why aviation? Why? Because obviously they offered you a place to work. Why?
My life always happened in a way where I didn't expect it to end up in that way. It's funny, they say that if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, and that's kind of scenario really resonates with me. So what I think happened was I graduated university and I had an opportunity to move to Switzerland, and it was very hard to get a job at that time as well without experience. I didn't have much experience, if I'm honest, early in retail. I worked all my life since I was 14. I started first cleaning houses when I was here in the UK to help the family. I was washing cars for the neighbors. I then was 16. I was working in a retail shop selling shoes. And I did that throughout my studies to support myself. And then when I graduated, I was offered actually a role to work in an agency in the recruitment industry. So I did that for, if I remember correctly, just under 3 years. But I knew that wasn't my calling. For me, my intention back then, get some experience, prove that you're reliable, you can work. And what better way to do it than with an international profile, not just in the UK, but abroad in Switzerland. That surely will make me highly regarded. And, after that industry, I thought I was going to come back because the other positions that I wanted to get into, like supply chain, which is where I finished my master's in. I did a bachelor in international business. So I wanted to move more into a consultancy kind of sphere or supply chain. But companies weren't giving me that opportunity. They were discriminating me on the basis of not knowing well enough German or not having enough experience in that field. I was too senior for internships, but too junior for these graduate scheme roles. So, I had 1 month left there where I was planning to move back. And then a recruiter from LinkedIn in Florida found my profile online and said, hey, you speak all these languages. Would you be interested in interviewing us for an office opening in Zurich? And I researched the company, and it was private aviation. And at that time, I thought the only things that exist in aviation were pilots and flight attendants, I had no clue about this world or this industry. And I said, sure, let's do that. And let's have a Skype call. We had a Skype call, and they said, great, we like you. We want to meet you in Zurich. We're going to come and meet you for lunch. And I thought they'll have it all planned and stuff. And I really wanted to get the job. I really wanted to get into the industry. It seemed fascinating to me as an outsider. And they showed up. And what was interesting was I thought they would organize, the place and so on, but it was up to me. So they put me on the spot. It was like it was a test. And I said, okay, yeah, let's go to this place. And it was a funny story. I took him to a vegetarian restaurant, like a buffet style restaurant, one of the best ones in Zurich. And we went there, and they didn't know it was vegetarian. I didn't tell them it was vegetarian. I didn't think they would care even, to be honest. So we sat down having food, and the wife's owner sits down, and she's like, hey, Eric, that was the director I ended up working for. I didn't see any meat anywhere, did you? And he's eating this vegan lookalike burger. He nearly drops it out of his mouth. It's like, meat? What the hell am I eating here? I was like, oh, guys, this is a vegetarian restaurant, by the way.
You just dropped it like that.
Yeah, and, they were cool with it. The food was still high quality, but I guess he thought he was eating a burger, but that was a vegan burger, So, that was like a cultural shock for him over there. But I made a good impression. They liked my language skills. They invited me to come over. They wanted someone to start quick. They liked the fact that I had sales experience. I said all the right things they wanted to hear. And that's how I kind of fell, if you like, into this industry. Little did I know that I was going to be but end up working in there 10 years later and in different ranks, different positions, and so on. So to answer your question, that's how that journey started.
Wow, that's crazy. Because I see... You said something, when you went to uni, you straight away joined a martial art class. I see that you got that discipline. When you set something and if you really want something, with your discipline, you will actually achieve it. So this is something I see that you got that characteristic about you. So my next question for that is that did being an immigrant, I don't even know if you called yourself an immigrant already. I think you were more of a British-Ukrainian. Now let's rephrase that. Did being a British-Ukrainian give you an advantage or a barrier in your career?
I mean, I don't know. It depends what angle we look at that. I think one thing that Ukrainians carry with them is discipline, strength, courage, and you can look at that in our defenders today for sure. So I think those characteristics, that those traits probably helped me get to my successful accomplishments today. And, even Usyk in his fight said himself in his podcast that, if you want to achieve something, you need discipline because some days you wake up, you want to do something and motivation is not there.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is. So I do think that maybe those traits helped me. Now, in terms of my identity, I don't think, and I wouldn't say that it gave me an advantage in terms of privilege or sympathy. That I wouldn't say so. Maybe in my first year when I started primary school, I got some sympathy as a child. But in terms of, hiring, I wouldn't say so. In terms of, it was more my skill set. It was more my strive for perfection. It's more motivation. Yeah.
Excellence.
And I think also humbleness as well. Because, many Ukrainians that came to the UK, they work hard, just like the Polish when they joined, the EU. The Ukrainians a lot of them have that reputation. They work hard. They want to do a good job. They want to do it as if they're doing it for themselves and how they want to be treated. A lot of them, right? I think that kind of discipline, that kind of characteristic, has given me an advantage, and also the ability to work between two markets as well. Working with clients from that part of the world in Eastern Europe and CIS, but also the UK. So I can switch between two different environments within two different crowds, be it the Ukrainian or British.
But that gives you, don't you think that gives you an advantage though? Because now you not only that, of course you speak Ukrainian, I bet you speak Russian as well. And you got clients from the East and the West. And now you also lived in the West. You've been to Netherlands, you've been to Switzerland, now in the UK. Majority of your life you lived in the UK. Don't you think that gives you an advantage, the fact that you can have one client comes in that's from the West, you know how to speak to him with the mentality, know how to talk, small talk as well, like you said. Someone from Eastern Europe, let's say a Ukrainian comes in, now you know how to approach him at the same time because you kind of understand the mentality. Don't you think that gives you an advantage?
You know what, you touched upon a good point there, and yes, you are right, because a lot of clients that may not speak English so well and prefer to speak another language, such as be it Ukrainian or a Kazakh client that does not speak Ukrainian but does speak Russian, for instance, they would prefer to deal with someone that is from the West, that speaks their language, than someone from their own country. Now, why would that be? Why would that be? In that part of the world, at the time I was working as a broker. A broker means I can quote you any aircraft around the world, right? I don't own any aircraft, but I have a partnership with operators that do operate those planes, and I know where they are, and I know where to find them, and I know how to find them, right? And the way we earn our money, like many other brokers, we put a margin on top, right? Or commission, if you like to call it. And at that time, I was 25, 26. I was dealing with all these big businessmen, and they would prefer to work with me because they know that I'm going to give them the real price. I'm not going to double it and wait for them to negotiate me down. Sometimes there were those situations, and that was a bit of a culture shock for me because I'm like, what you're asking is below market rate, below operating cost. That can't be the case. I can't offer you that price. But the majority, and I got told this later on, these clients from those part of the world would prefer to deal with a Westerner who grew up in a democratic kind of establishment with a different mentality than someone from their own because they're used to ripping each other off. I'm not saying everyone's the same and it's always like that, but in the aviation world, tactics in terms of negotiating and selling, the process, the method is very different to sometimes how you do it in the UK. And in fact, in a lot of places in Europe, when you try to bargain with them, prices are fixed. And I think they also understand that. So they come to me that speaks their own language where they don't have to speak necessarily English. And that's where maybe I do have some advantage for sure. And looking back, the first aviation job as a broker where I started, they did pick me because of my languages. So that was an advantage in a sense.
Yeah. Because you said that one of the things that they looked at your CV, the fact that you can speak multiple languages, which gives you an advantage as well.
Yeah.
You're bilingual, no? You could say. Yeah, you're bilingual. So I'm gonna talk about a little bit about your work. Who are the clients you typically work with?
Sure. Very good question and an important question as well. I think a lot of outsiders would probably think that the people that fly on these aircraft, private aircraft, are maybe people that are after luxury. And while there is an element of that, true, what people tend to forget or not notice sometimes is that every continent, every country has a different attitude to that style of travel. I'll give you an example. Africa as a continent, right? One of the challenges for people to travel within Africa from country to country is lack of connectivity. That's a fact. There's a lack of connectivity. And businessmen, governments, company, corporation heads, they may need to be in a certain place at a certain time. The only mode of transport is sometimes an operator that has this fleet of aircraft, right? So connectivity is important in places of African countries, let's say, right? And another thing people need to also take into consideration in terms of the clients that we work with, if people were all about splashing the money in the luxury side, they could also buy their own aircraft, if you think about it. And there is people that do. We don't necessarily work with them. Some of them we do work with them for different reasons and purposes. But renting an aircraft is much more cost effective than owning an aircraft or owning a percentage of that aircraft. And there's no depreciation costs or assets. So that money otherwise that would be lost for depreciation can be put to better use. What better use? Well, it could go into the economies. It could go into charities. It could go into something else, But that's more cost saving than buying your own aircraft, for instance. So the people that we work with, there could be governments, right? Why do they fly? It's not necessarily because of corruption. It could be also for safety reasons, because they cannot get onto a commercial aircraft. It's not safe for them for security reasons. It could be because the government aircraft is not available. People say, why don't you just use the government aircraft? Well, the government aircraft is reserved for the president or the prime minister or the king themselves, right? They need it for emergencies or for certain purposes. And predominantly, only the head of state travels on those aircraft. So what do? Do you use state money and buy, a second aircraft, which is more costly to the taxpayers' money, for instance, if it comes from the taxpayers' money? Or do you just rent it, right? Which is more cost effective, a one-time flight than owning an aircraft, the whole year round. So the people that we fly they can be politicians, they can be former politicians for security. They could be businessmen that otherwise lack connectivity. Even today, believe it or not, in Eastern Europe, there's not enough commercial airlines that offer enough connectivity. For example, if you wanted to go from a place called Varna in Bulgaria in the south to go to Tallinn, good luck finding a commercial flight. If you're based over there, how are you going to get there? If you have business there, if you have a factory there, or vice versa, from Tallinn to Varna in Bulgaria, a remote region, right?
Why is it so difficult even in Eastern Europe to get
Not enough business, not enough traffic, not enough availability. There's no commercial airlines. And you might be able to get there through different connections. Maybe those connections don't suit your business schedule if you have investors that you need to meet in Estonia, for example, right? So connectivity is a key reason why people do use private aviation and the people that we fly. So there could be businessmen, there could be companies where it's not, should I say, feasible or interesting for them to purchase an aircraft. It could be, of course, also high-profile people. It could be celebrities, right? That otherwise don't want to buy a plane. So it's a range of different people. The dynamics of this has really changed. And I would say, like Africa, the continent, Asia as a continent is also in a similar setting. They have probably a little bit more aircraft. I would have to look into that. But they also have a lack of supply in that part of the world for aircraft. So connectivity is key. Now, if you compare that to the Middle East, that's a different story. It's more about service. So that's where you have, royal families flying, for example. That's where you have businessmen that spend a proportion of their time there and need to connect to Asia or Europe, and whereas for Europe, it's also a lot more of the times business people. Probably 60% business and 40% leisure is how I would describe it. So the people that fly, a small part of it is maybe luxury. The majority, at least from my experience, are business people. They need to get from A to B for efficiency, for time saving. That's what they tell me, because if there's a delay, that's what they tell me. So that's the kind of people that we fly.
It's crazy. It's wonderful that you say this, because what we see on social media, all these, they're always next to your window, drinking champagne, luxury Rolex, it kind of changes your perspective. It changes your perspective. That's what you actually think. When you see private jets, you think luxury. You think people, millions or billionaires that have or own. You never actually think about what you just said there. And you actually work in that industry as well. So I'm kind of getting that first-hand experience. So my second question to that, which is very important, is that what kind of pressure comes with managing ultra-high net worth clients?
I think service can also be improved in this industry from various angles. So I think the service element, but as I said before, I'm a perfectionist in my craft, and that means accuracy, that means efficiency, that means working like a Swiss watch. And, some clients are understanding about delays, some are not. Why do delays happen? Could be air traffic control. A lot of people want to go to Ibiza on holiday or Nice, and there's just too many aircraft parked there, or too many aircraft flying in the sky. And, we don't get to tell or refuse what air traffic control says to us. We have to abide by those rules just like any other provider. So I think in the summer, there's that stress, wanting the client to fly at the time that they contracted with us to fly. That's probably one of the key challenges. And then the second challenge, in the peak season, we're going to have winter soon. Everyone's going to want to fly skiing and stuff and get to other places, is finding availability on the market. Aircraft that are available to transport clients. Some clients have very specific tastes. Maybe it's the age of the aircraft. Maybe it's the ability to fly with a pet, for example. That's another reason why clients actually book to fly private, because they're very worried about their animals in the cargo, in a commercial plane. They can't sometimes take them on board, There is just certain elements of risk with that. So luckily, in my company, all the aircraft are pet friendly. We're one of the biggest operators in the world, actually. So what I notice is that when clients come to me is finding availability in these peak seasons. It's difficult to find sometimes availability for their schedules.
All right, this is interesting. So what about this one? This is the question I have. Has working with wealthy clients changed your view on class and status?
In terms of for myself or
for yourself?
In terms of speaking for myself, I would say no, very easily. And the reason being is because I had a very humble upbringing. And I always remember my roots. I think that's a part of knowing my identity, knowing where I came from, knowing how I grew up, knowing the value of money, mentioning some of those jobs earlier that I did, and also the strict discipline and upbringing that I had from my parents, and knowing what it takes, what hard work is, So to answer your question, no. Even though I live in Dubai, I live the most low-key, humble life you can imagine. I give back to a lot of people. I believe in giving back. I believe in creating or joining a ecosystem of people that help each other, that pulls others up and lift others up and mentor other people and give back to people. Because I've been in situations, I've struggled, my life wasn't necessarily easy growing up. I had to fight for myself. I had no one to look up to. I'm the eldest of 8 kids, I had to set the example, to help my siblings to become successful and to look up to someone, So I had very limited role models. And that always kept me humble. And I think a part of it is also my religion. I'm Christian, and I've read the Bible from start to finish 4 times.
Wow.
I was a very dedicated Christian as I was growing up. I was going to Sunday schools. And my relationship, my faith with God also kept me quite humble in that sense as well. I have that kind of conscious that puts me in the right lane and to stay righteous and stuff. So to answer your question, no, it hasn't changed me in terms of wanting more to live a luxury life. That's not why I'm living in Dubai. I'm living in Dubai because I'm investing in a future for myself. And, I'm still learning about myself in that respect, but and discovering what that may look like in the future. But it hasn't changed me at all. I drive an average car, an SUV, Mitsubishi ASX, the most probably underrated but most reliable, nice car in Dubai. I live in a decent, kind of middle class community in a 1-bedroom apartment. I have 2 rescued cats, from the streets that I saved. So a very humble life, very humble.
I guess it depends on what you value in life.
Yeah, and that's not to say that someone else can't live it differently. It's up to them. I just know my priorities. I know my values. I know what's important to me. And, for me, peace, quiet, harmony, knowing that I'm helping others as God has helped me. And sometimes I believe God is using me to help other people. Is how I live at peace and feel well within myself. I always know I can do better. But, even when, this situation happened with Ukraine, I felt humble enough to help,
I remember you were the first one that responded to my text on Facebook.
I'm impressed you remember that still.
Yeah, of course. You responded, you and there was another woman, same as us, Anna Walden, but she lives outside of London. And she responded as well, hey, how can I help? And I was like shocked. I was like, wow. And you know what, Alex? When I wrote that, I didn't expect to get it from Ukrainians that like myself been living here for a long time. And when I met you, I was amazed because, as you know, Sergey, the one that I work with at work, when Sergey found out that I started the job where I'm currently work, he was shocked because his colleague said there's another Ukrainian that's starting work, and he was shocked when he saw me. He's like, "Are you sure you're Ukrainian?" I said yes. All right, okay. I'm going to push forward. I'm going to talk about your Ukrainian identity abroad.
Yeah.
How do you describe your identity when people ask, where are you from?
Today, I feel more than sure that my identity is British-Ukrainian. Why? Because I still maintain the cultural traditions, the heritage, the food, the things I do with my family when I come visit in the UK. Especially my grandfather is a very proud Ukrainian. He was born in Ivano-Frankivsk as well. So, and also, the people that I speak with as well that are Ukrainian. I'm surrounding myself also with more Ukrainians. I think for that reason, I would say British-Ukrainian. That's how I would identify myself, because I still have commitments with Ukraine. I'm still helping the country. I'm still helping with projects over there. My heart, a part of my heart is still in Lviv. I fell in love with that city, and it's never gone. It's never gone. It's still there.
It's I want to say first of all, thank you, and how you identify yourself as well. Very important, because I know why you identify yourself British-Ukrainian. Born in Ukraine, raised here in London. You love Ukraine, the fact that not just because you were born there, but there's your family, your relatives from there, and especially what's going on now. Mm-hmm. I think you uplifted more of your Ukrainian roots, not because when the war started, but obviously influx, a lot of Ukrainians were coming here. And obviously, I would say part of the war. Because at the end of the day, Alex, me and you went through the same thing. We had identity crisis here in UK.
Yeah.
I remember when a lady named Olga, she called me and she said to me, my son is going to school, and she said to me, she goes, Sasha, do you think there's going to be Ukrainians there? And when she said that, I remember myself being here at 7 years old when I went to school in North London. I didn't have any Ukrainian friends. I didn't have no Ukrainian friends until I hit college times. Or maybe I was out of college. I met Polish, Lithuanians. I met one Russian guy I studied with as well, but never Ukrainians. But I turned around to that lady and I said, no, you will. Do you know why? Because I knew the future looks bright. There will be more Ukrainians coming in, and there's much more. There's about 150,000 more or less in London. It's a huge community, and
For sure.
I am happy that Ukrainians are coming here, but I'm also not happy because in what circumstances they're coming here. They're coming in here because of the war. You know, it's a big thing. Okay, what stereotypes about Ukrainians do you still see today?
Gosh, stereotypes. I guess how much they're proud of borscht. I think that we're very proud of our food. We're very proud of a lot of things about our dressings. I think we're very into our Easter that we celebrate. One thing that I didn't notice until I got into my 30s is how nice we dress for this Easter period, where we carry the basket with like eggs and bunnies. I never saw that before when I was a kid. I wasn't exposed to that, and I didn't go to Ukrainian churches back then. I didn't even know we had one in London until I think me and you met, and I started seeing that on social media. I'm like, what? We had a Ukrainian church all this time? I never knew that. So I think those are some of the things that I still see and so on. I think that's probably what it is. Aside the accents as well, when people speak English, it's cute. I'm not, I love it because it's refreshing. It's boring to hear the same English accent, So when you have that accent, it's cute. I like it when people try and do their best,
No, this is so true. This is why I have these shows, and it's good to invite Ukrainians like yourself that have been here for a long time, British Ukrainians, Anglo-Ukrainians, and also Ukrainians that have just arrived. And when I hear them, listen, I even have had Ukrainians here that been in the country for 15 years, and they speak like they just arrived fresh from the boat like yesterday.
My mom still has an accent, and she came 20 years ago, whatever that was. I don't remember now, but yeah.
What advice would you give to Ukrainians trying to build a career abroad?
Gosh, that's a very broad question. I think in any case, wherever you want to build your career, don't do it just for money. You know why? Because you won't last a very long time. Your emotions will catch up with you, your feelings, and your mind will begin to play games. So I think the answer to that would be start with passion. Because Steve Jobs said himself, you do what you love, you don't work a day in your life. And I think that was the big aha moment for me when I started to work in aviation. I finally found something that I loved. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy. It was hard. I did a lot of night shifts, I had princes calling me in the middle of the night saying they want to fly private. But coming back to the question, I think the first thing is find out what you truly enjoy and love, because I think the way I was socialized and brought up was you need to work to support your family. It doesn't matter if you like it or not. That's the kind of old regime mentality that I got from my family at the time. But as I became more wiser, I learned that it's important to love what you do as well. So if you move abroad, the first thing you should do is make sure you actually want to do that job. It sounds basic, but some people don't look at that. They don't think about that, So the first thing is make sure you love what you do. And then the second thing is, make sure the circumstances are right. Make sure you have, as well as a plan of entry, a plan of exit, a plan B if it doesn't go wrong. It's not to doubt yourself, but you're prepared for the worst case scenario. For me, when I moved to Dubai, I knew I had an apartment here that I bought in London, right? I knew I had family here if anything happened. And that gave me some kind of cushion as a plan B strategy. So anyone that moves abroad, make sure that you are passionate about what you want to do, that this is exactly what your heart is calling you to do, and you have a plan of entry as well as a plan of exit, right? And don't put all your eggs in one basket as well.
Yeah, 100%. These are my final set of questions to you. These are signature moves from Identity Talks.
Okay.
What does identity mean to you?
I think identity is a place of belonging.
Is that it?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
Cool. What one stereotype about Ukrainians you want to challenge?
Challenge. If they do think that British food isn't good, they haven't tried it yet. The real British food.
100%, I agree. Because a lot of Ukrainians, when they first came here, they were saying to me, about fish and chips. That was bad. I said, no, they were talking about breakfast, English breakfast. The eggs, the beans and stuff, and toast. They said, it's terrible. I said, listen, wait, live here for 6 months, or maybe give it a year. I guarantee you like it. Guess what? After a year, a lot of Ukrainians came up to me and said, wow, we love the English breakfast. Even just walking to work, you can just smell it. I said, it's the same as me. I love my English breakfast. I love the eggs. Man. Wonderful. What one lesson you learned abroad that Ukraine never taught you?
One lesson that Ukraine...
No. What one lesson you learned abroad that Ukraine never taught you?
Good question. That's a difficult one. I think Ukrainians are very hardworking, right? We know that. But sometimes I think, at least in the olden days, right, people didn't relax enough. And I learned how, I don't want to confuse that with being lazy. I mean, as in when to let go, when to take a deep breath, right? And one thing I've learned abroad in the Middle East is that if you can't control it, don't stress about it. It's like, whatever, Habibi. That's their mentality. So I think that's something that I've learned, because sometimes we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And in Ukraine, we have that. We want to provide for our families and do well for others. And in the UAE, I've learned that if you can't control it, don't stress about it. That's probably one thing that I've learned.
Cool. What's next for you, personally and professionally?
Personally, I want to. I hope I do better in my career. I hope I will settle down eventually, meet someone good for me, and hope that I can engage in some personal recovery projects for Ukraine when everything goes back to normal, if I may describe it that way. And in terms of the professional side, I really would like to get into more real estate investments, for sure. I want to widen my portfolio in that sector.
Thank you, Alex. Where can people find you online? Are you on Instagram, LinkedIn, any other platform? Sure.
So if they Google me on Alex Mansfield, Private Aviation, I'm sure they'll find me on there, based in Dubai with my profile on there. If they want to follow me on Instagram, it's roulette.89. That's the way to find me on social media. Those are the main platforms that I use.
Cool, great. Yeah. Listen, I want to say thank you very much for being on my show, and I'm just going to finish off my outro. Alex, thank you for bringing your story here.
Of course.
It was an immigrant story, but now it's a British-Ukrainian journey, the cultural layers and the reality behind operating in the luxury aviation world. Identity Talk is all about real voices, real experiences, and apologetic honesty. Your journey shows exactly what happens when identity meets global ambition. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next episode. And I guess what? You will be coming back. All these guests that have been coming to my show, you guys will be coming back, because my main vision for this Identity Talk is not one-to-one interviews. Currently, right now, I'm doing it to stretch my legs. But I would like to invite British, Ukrainians, and other nationalities here to discuss identity, culture, immigration, race is very important. Love, relationship, these varying topics. And I thank you for accepting my offer to be on my show today, even though you landed from Dubai, because you know what, I want to say thank you very much for responding in 2022. That opened my eyes, because when I found out there's people like me who came here, raised here, because I see myself more British, British, somewhere in between. And finding someone like yourself and other people, I'm like, yes, wow, now I can invite you to interviews and I want to hear your story. What's it like when you came here, when you grew up here? What was it like with school, this and this? And how did you see yourself? Because I remember, I'll tell you something, I grew up on Soviet films, the Venata Stoliv. I grew up on that. When I first time listened to Ukrainian song, except from Smereka, apart from that song, I first time listened to Ukrainian song, not Russian, Ukrainian song, was in 2013 with was a band called Kanu. I can't remember Ukrainian thing. And she was singing Plakala. Plakala means cry in Ukraine. That's the first time I hear it. Before, I never used to listen to Ukrainian songs at all. I used to listen to majority British, I think, and it's just completely changed. And I'm I am glad that there are many Ukrainians here, but not at this circumstance. The fact that there's a war. I wish they came here when, like, the Polish and Lithuanians came here, and also not just women coming here. I want men as well.
Of course,
because it matters. But listen, I want to say thank you very much for being on my show,
for having me.
And I'm sure I'm going to have you next time. So, anyways, guys, subscribe and hit the comments and write your comments below as well. So let us know. Thank you.
Thank you so much.